Welcome back, sleepyheads. You've arrived just before the world raises its voice. Before Silas steps in the frame, a word from the voice behind the clock. You know, the one who sets these moments in motion and knows exactly when to let them linger. You see, this morning at Cape Kennedy matters because history is still standing perfectly still. The rocket hasn't moved. The engines haven't spoken. The crowd is whispering, and humanity is holding its breath, uncertain whether it's about to touch the moon or be reminded of its limits. That pause between certainty and consequence is where truth lives, and it makes this the perfect place for a quiet walk. If you enjoy drifting through history right before it ignites, settle in, join the sleepy circle. Let's begin.
Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your slightly sunburned, mosquito-bitten guide through time. If you enjoy my voice softly narrating humanity's most audacious all-nighters, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. If it's from a moving vehicle, please let someone else steer unless you're NASA and the vehicle is 3 stages tall. Take a breath and hold it for a count of moon. July 16th, 1969, Cape Kennedy, Florida. The air is hot enough to season you. The humidity could be bottled and sold as soup, and out there beyond the palmettos stands the largest match humanity ever dared to strike. Let's begin. The Indian River Causeway stretches ahead. Blacktop laid across ink, railings blinking with taillights. Families have turned the bridge into a campsite of folding chairs, thermoses, and nervous jokes. The river below is flat as secrecy, mirroring a sky about to make promises it will keep. Every few seconds, a breeze slips over the water and licks the sweat. At my temple, a small mercy from an otherwise very Florida night. Lightning forks far offshore, violet blades carving the horizon. For a heartbeat, the entire coast flashes a negative. The dunes, the scrub, the distant skeletal outline of the crawlerway. And then it dies, leaving stars shivering in the silence. The brief flare sketches the rocket's silhouette against the far sky like God testing a flashbulb before the portrait. I smile despite myself. Looks like heaven's making sure the aperture's right. News vans are stacked nose to tail along the shoulder, antenna masts cranked up like chrome saplings. A man in a white shirt and tie, he's been up all night and is pretending he hasn't, whispers facts into a camera the size of a small appliance. A boy in footy pajamas holds binoculars upside down and declares he can see the moon from here. His father, made of coffee and pride, tells him that's the point. Someone mutters there's no space left. Not for cars, not for seagulls, not for another breath. And yet the crowds keep thickening because history rarely checks fire code. I drift among them, slipping between coolers and the careful territory of tripod legs. The bridge rail is warm under my hand. From the water comes the slow, sucking release of tide against pilings, the patient lungs of a place accustomed to storms and launches, a coastline that's learned to cradle both wreckage and wonder. A woman in curlers pours orange juice into wax cups and hands them along to strangers without asking their names. A reporter practices one small step with a flourish. A cameraman tells him that's not his line, and they laugh, nerves being chewed into humor. A convertible full of teenagers crawls past us. They've painted Go Apollo on the side doors and drawn a crude Saturn V that leans like a cigarette. One of them waves a little American flag that looks tired and thrilled. On the far shoulder, an elderly couple shares a camp stool. The wife, steadying her husband's elbow while he focuses a battered field scope. They have the reverence of churchgoers and the outfit of people who camped out for Sinatra tickets once upon a more terrestrial time. Another lightning fork sows the ocean to the sky. For an instant, the distant launch complex flares into relief. The gantry, like scaffolding around a titan's leg, floodlights pooling in chalk-white circles. The rocket is asleep, but not really, more like a held breath, more like the pause between ready and go. A cheer strides up the bridge, loose and anticipatory, as a public address voice from some distant radio counts down to another milestone in this long ballet. Tanking complete, weather good, astronauts suited and smiling like people who wrote their wills and then left them on the dresser. A man near me crosses himself and then, to balance the ledger, knocks on wood. I respect anyone who covers multiple bases when fire is involved. I start across the causeway. Soft footsteps, the river's breath under my own. The crowd density thins at the center span where the wind is stronger and the view is clean. From here, the whole coast is a rumor of lights. Out over the Atlantic, lightning again, quieter now, as if the storm itself is impressed and doesn't want to interrupt. I rest my palms on the rail and wait for the silence to settle in. This is the hum before history. Radios murmuring, camera shutters nibbling at time, the low insect thrum of generators feeding the night. The sound is almost nothing, and yet it holds everyone in place like a spell. First time? A stranger asks. First moon? I answer. He grins. Same. We stand there without the need for more. Two atoms aligned in the same current, the river licking at its edges below us. A child nearby asks why the rocket is white. Her mother says it's painted that way so the heat can find somewhere else to live. Good answer. If paint could save us, we'd have painted the entire century. Ahead, the NASA security gate glows like a checkpoint to tomorrow. Floods light the perimeter a clean, surgical white. The queue funnels into a geometry of fences and cheerful scrutiny. Badges lifted, clipboards checked, smiles fixed with pins. A woman in a blue flight jacket holds a walkie like a talisman and tells a cameraman he'll get his stand-up after they clear the bus. The cameraman says 10-4 and means, I'm begging you. A swarm of mosquitoes tries to unionize around my neck. I relocate, and they write a strongly worded letter to my blood. The gate itself could be a set piece from a different kind of story. Cold War angles, practical concrete, the kind of architecture that assumes a future and refuses to be embarrassed by it. Beyond it, the access road glides away into palmettos and dark pools. Trucks rumble through, their headlights soft like courteous animals. Each time the barrier swings open, a tiny breeze washes out, air-conditioned and carrying a note of something sweet and solvent. The ghost of kerosene braided with the metal-clean fragrance of a place that scrubs itself daily with precision. People cluster at the chain link for a glimpse of the interior choreography. A bus arrives, engineers and a few brittle-looking men with thin ties and thicker glasses step down, blinking into the lights. They look like bookkeepers who learn to bully gravity with math. One of them pats his breast pocket as if confirming a pen is still there. Maybe it's a pen, maybe it's a prayer. Another has a slide rule tucked like a sword at his belt. I want to applaud them, these quiet duelists who force the sky to show its work. The crowd thickens against the fence. A teenager presses his palm to the mesh, leaving a lattice of diamond impressions when he pulls away. I want to do what they do, he tells the fence, and perhaps the fence transmits the message. The guard nearest us, tan, uniform, calm, eyes, tilts his hat back and says, not unkindly, that the future has room if you bring a sharp pencil and a stubborn heart. A burst of laughter hops along the line as someone says there's no space left for seagulls. This is inaccurate. A seagull proves the point by landing on the gatehouse roof and screaming about snacks. An officer tosses it a crust, and the bird catches it with the efficiency of a pickpocket. Even the scavengers perform tonight. A family edges alongside me. The father cradles a Polaroid that looks like it weighs as much as one stage of the rocket. The mother is carefully beautiful, hair sprayed into a halo that defies Florida's best sabotage. Their daughter holds a rag doll with space-mad eyes. The girl asks if the moon will be different when men walk on it. Her mother says we'll see it better. The answer lands somewhere between science and poetry, and to be honest, that's the right place for tonight. Lightning flares again, softer, way out along the ocean's seam. The reflection hurries across the river like a rumor. Somewhere out beyond the gate, technicians check valves and readouts, feed numbers into hungry consoles. Somewhere, 3 men breathe slow behind visors and let their minds climb ahead of their bodies. Checklist after checklist, a liturgy designed to build a ladder out of seconds. I push fingers into my pockets to keep from ringing them. Not my launch. Not my call. Still, it's hard to keep your hands quiet when the sky is clearing its throat. A cluster of journalists crowds a phone bank, each handset tethered to the world by a corkscrew cord. A man in a narrow tie reads backward through his notes. Liftoff time, weather load, azimuth, recovery assets. He taps ash into a coffee cup that says, "World's Best Dad." I believe him. The ash blooms like gray snow, a tiny November in July. A pickup rolls past with a hand-painted sign strapped in its bed. To the moon, boys. The driver leans on the horn long enough to turn it into a hymn. People clap because they need to do something with their hands besides tremble. Nearby, 2 engineers argue about a margin in the fuel calculations in a tone that suggests they will never be done caring. Their voices are low, but their eyes burn bright. One of them notices me noticing and shrugs. The first time you do something impossible, you want to do it right. Fair. I step as close to the gate as courtesy allows. Beyond, the access road catches a wash of pale light and transforms into a ribbon. The palms beyond are silhouettes of prayer. In the distance, a white pencil stands under its scaffold. It looks fragile from here, as if a stiff breath could topple it, which is funny considering it plans to bully the planet until the planet lets go. People crane their necks, following their own thoughts to the same point. We are all quietly measuring ourselves against the scale of what's about to happen. A boy next to me is turning a quarter over and over in his hand, heads to the moon, tails to the ocean. He flips it, fumbles, and the coin skitters under the fence to the secured side. He looks at me like I can time travel the quarter back. I shake my head, grin, and say, "Consider it a down payment." His mother tousles his hair. He stares at the coin as though the fence might offer refunds. We listen again. The loudspeaker from a parked sedan spills the latest. Astronauts on board, hatch closed, vent arm retracted. The words tilt 1,000 spines forward. Some people kiss without ceremony. Some people pray without moving their lips. A man nearby whispers that the distance from Cape Kennedy to the moon is 238,000 miles, and change. Change, he emphasizes, because even infinity needs spare coins for tolls. The gate cycles. A final convoy trundles through, white vans miniatured by distance, purposeful as ants. The barrier lowers. A guard glances at his watch, lifts his eyes to the east, and allows himself the smallest of smiles. He's seen a few launches. This is not a few launches. I step back to the bridge's shoulder where the causeway widens and the breeze can remember how to be a breeze. The crowd here is mosaic. Veterans with medals that catch stray light, school kids whose future careers are about to be quietly chosen, drivers who parked where they should not have and will never regret it, priests and surfers, secretaries and engineers, each of us a small, sweating cell in a larger organism called hope. The mosquitoes vote to adjourn. Even they sense the narrative is no longer about them. One more lick of lightning, far and faint, a benediction. The sky releases a fistful of stars between torn clouds. The river accepts them without comment. I rest my forearms on the rail, feel the bridge vibrate with the communal murmur, and let the breath out slow. Anticipation moves through us like static, hair lifting, hearts pricking. A launch is dangerous, yes. It is also, in this hour before fire, unbearably tender. We built a skyscraper that intends to leave, and now we're asking it politely to take us with it. Looks like heaven's tested its flash, I say to you and to the water and to myself. Now we wait for the shutter. We'll keep walking, past the gate, down the service road where palmetto shadows sharpen into saw teeth, to the press mound where cameras will drink the sunrise and cough it back as film. The rocket sleeps on its pad like a white animal that dreams in equations. Soon the dream will wake and stand. But for now, hold this hum in your chest. The world's biggest gamble is whispering from just beyond the fence, and the night, heavy with salt and sweat and static, is about to open like a fist. Chapter 2. Engines and Echoes. The press observation gantry rises from the scrub like a metal thicket that forgot to stop growing. Tripods bloom everywhere, black-legged, chrome-jointed, each crowned with a camera staring devoutly east. It looks like a forest that worships. Shutter speeds. Reporters have staked out territories with masking tape and charm, their badges pinned like talismans against chaos. Cables snake between feet, coffee cups, and the occasional heroic donut that didn't survive re-entry. I thread through the crowd as if walking a maze designed by caffeine. A man in a powder blue blazer recites his script into a microphone that could double as a small fire hydrant. He keeps smoothing his hair as if the rocket will judge him. A woman with a stack of notepads and a predatory smile interviews anyone foolish enough to make eye contact. She collects adjectives like butterflies, historic, audacious, inevitable. Another crew argues in hushed tones about whether to say Cape Kennedy or Cape Canaveral on air. They decide to flip a coin and call it tradition either way. A siren detonates above us, one long, teeth-on-edge shriek, and the gantry blushes red with spinning beacons. For an instant, the whole press corps freezes, mid-breath. A boom mic stops dead over a man's head like a halo reconsidering sainthood. Someone drops a reel. Tape snakes across the boards with the frantic dignity of a startled eel. Attention, attention, test only. This is a test only. Relief breaks the spell like a weak dam. Laughter ripples thinly, the kind you put on when your heart wants to nap on the floor. A photographer wipes his brow with the press pass and declares he never doubted it for a second, which is a bold-faced lie, and we all honor the effort. NASA's version of a morning jog. Get the heart rate up, make sure we're all mortal, I tell the tripod nearest me. It refuses comment. Far off, the rocket holds its pose, indifferent to our mammal drama. Floodlights lift the gantry's struts into luminous ribs. A breeze rattles the channel guides, and the sound is cast-iron cicadas. Beneath the tower, the flame trench sits idle, a red brick canyon with the patience of geology. Even empty, it implies volume, a place that's learned to swallow thunder and burp smoke rings. Next to me, a young tech with a headset bigger than his jaw points toward the pad and narrates for a friend, voice trembling between pride and superstition. Outgassing pours from a vent in feathery white, liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen warming into ghost. The crowd murmurs at the sight the way parishioners murmur when the incense slips from the censer and curls in visible prayer. A boy with freckles and a crew cut whispers, "Dragon breath." His mother squeezes his shoulder, her smile a careful shelf holding both wonder and fear. I climb to the top deck of the gantry, boards flexing beneath my boots in a rhythm that suggests confidence and reminds you about gravity. Above the camera heads, the view spreads, the glinting river, the long ribbon of causeway, the VAB shouldering the horizon like a battleship parked on land. The building looks impossible, as if someone dared a warehouse to become a landmark. And it said, "Fine, but I'll need a county's worth of steel." A pair of broadcasters rehearse their exchange. At precisely, because the moon respects punctuality. They crack, relieved to find a joke that doesn't tempt fate. Down below, an older man in shirt sleeves adjusts a lot meter with the tenderness of a midwife. He glances toward the pad and crosses himself with the shadow of his hand. He is not alone. Faith wears many lanyards. A public address voice disturbs the boards again. T minus checks. Range green. All stations go. The gantry's population collectively exhales and then, to be safe, inhales again. The air tastes of salt and aluminum, bug spray, and newsroom ink. I take one last look at the forest of tripods, each one aimed at tomorrow as if focus alone could bend destiny, and then I climb down and set off toward the VAB. The Vehicle Assembly Building is not a building so much as a declaration. Up close, its skin is pale and sheer, a vertical geography cross-hatched with service doors and inset windows that appear as pinpricks until a bus rolls past and proves each pinprick is the size of a studio apartment. The flag hanging on its face looks normal at distance. Then your brain recalibrates and whispers that each stripe could host a baseball game. The doorway yawns a small nation wide. Inside, cool air wraps around me with the chill of an industrial cathedral. The first impression is scale. The second is silence. Not absence of sound silence, but the respectful chiaroscuro of engineered hush. Ventilation rushing in a basso continuo, the occasional ding and roll of a distant hoist, a security cart signed by with tires that prefer to be rumors. The vertical nave shoots up and up, blue-gray at the floor and vanishing into rafters where sodium lamps hang like careful stars. Steel trusses crisscross in a lace only giants could knit. I tilt my head back until my neck complains, then keep looking because complaint seems ungrateful in the presence of this much ambition. Platforms ring the space at stacked altitudes, work decks that once pressed against the Saturn's flanks to deliver technicians into their cathedral work. Railings gleam. Safety chains hang with the tidy menace of jewelry. Somewhere above, a crane trolley idles, its hook a solemn punctuation suspended in air. A tour guide leads a small gaggle of VIPs across the floor. He points, he names, he translates awe into nouns: mobile launcher, swing arm, crawler transporter. They nod like people learning a language where the word for impossible was quietly retired. On the far wall, a red sign shouts "Hard Hat Area" with the conviction of a sermon. Everyone ignores it, and no one dares test the gods. I step into an elevator the size of a studio apartment and press the button that suggests skyward. The doors close with the certainty of a vault. The car shivers, shakes off doubt, and rises. As we climb, the VAB reveals itself in cross-section, girders and platforms layered like sheet music. The metal hums beneath my feet. Not a rattle, not a whine, a steady organ note that puts vertebrae at attention. It's as if the place is holding a low mass for the universe. My hand slides along the rail, and the sweat my palm leaves behind feels like an offering. Halfway up, the car sways. Not much, just enough to remind the breath it has a job. A woman next to me laughs once, a quick bark, and says she's not afraid of heights, merely skeptical of gravity's sense of humor. We rise again, the shaft lights strobing past like clock ticks. Floor numbers blink with understated drama. 6, 9, 12. Time becomes a vertical thing. When the doors part near the upper decks, a sheet of air greets us, colder and thinner. The platform extends into the vast, a balcony in a theater where the play is called Leaving. Below, the flame trench yawns like a stone baptismal font, a basalt mouth that has eaten fire and learned to ask for seconds. The far wall bears the scorch mosaic of previous sermons, smoke-lettered hieroglyphs in black and rust. I rest my forearms on the rail and imagine the world trembling to that future tense thunder. You don't need religion to feel reverence here, you just need a pulse. In the distance, the mobile launcher stands like a wheeled chapel. Swing arms, now folded, once embraced the Saturn as if holding a friend steady before the leap. Men have leaned from those arms in the middle of unthinkable height, tightening bolts no one else will ever see. Their courage is built into the welds. Used to be you went to a cathedral to see miracles, says a voice behind me. A technician, with a face carved by sun and shift work, sets down a toolbox and nods toward the open bay. Now, we build the miracle, then send it out the door like a kid off to college. Does it get easier? I ask. He considers. Only if you don't think about it, then. He grins. We think about it. The elevator takes us down again, slower this time, as if reluctant to rejoin the scale of humans. On the floor, a crew pushes a rolling scaffold with the solemnity of pallbearers and the optimism of stagehands. A brass plaque near the exit lists names in tidy rows, the living index of people who converted steel and intention into a machine that could argue with the void and win on points. Outside, the heat folds over me like a re-entry blanket. The gantry is a silhouette now, the press still peopled but quieter, as if the building's hush followed me out and draped itself over the crowd. The siren mercifully keeps its peace. The river holds its breath. Somewhere a gull reconsiders its career in journalism. Awe tinged with anxiety. That's the mood. Machinery has replaced miracles, and both are about to be tested. We've counted bolts and blessings. We've weighed propellant and prayers. Now we walk back toward the press mound, where lenses point, like a field of sunflowers about to meet their sun. The great cathedral hums behind us. The forest of tripods trembles in front, and eastward, beyond lights and fences, the tall white argument with gravity stands ready to make its chaos. Chapter 3. Frost and Fire. The Crawlerway is a gravel river wide enough for dreams and heavy enough to crush them. Twin tracks of Alabama river rock stretch from the vehicle assembly building to the pad like a gray artery feeding the sky. The stones are pale, rounded, and compacted into submission, each one tested to survive both weight and history. Standing here, you can smell heat long before you see it. Hot dust, hot engines, hot men pretending they aren't terrified. Then the sound arrives, low, rolling, like the planet grinding its teeth. A vibration walks up through the soles of my boots and sets up residence behind my sternum. The crawler is moving. It comes around the bend at the speed of bureaucracy, 1 mile an hour, but that's still faster than Congress. A mountain with tank treads dragging prophecy on its back. The thing breathes diesel and exhales reverberation. Every bolt, every plate, every track link sounds like a hymn played on sheet metal. Engineers stand at the margins, hands in pockets, watching their creation crawl toward glory. Nobody talks. You don't heckle God when he's in motion. Dust billows in the crawler's wake, rising in slow, reverent halos. The morning light paints the haze gold and gray, like incense made of Florida and iron. The air is thick with vibration, the kind that reminds you your organs have suspension systems. Kids in the press field bounce with each passing tremor. Mothers clutch them by the shoulders and say, "Remember this," as if there's any chance they won't. The crawler grumbles to a stop near the flame trench, settling into its role as beast of burden turned altar boy. The pad crew swarms around it. Ants attending a dinosaur. The rocket above glints pale in the early sun, vapor dripping off its flanks like melting starlight. Somewhere, a seagull tries to cry over the noise and realizes it's been demoted to sound effect. I walk alongside the crawlerway, dust crunching underfoot, the sound like walking through a box of bones. A man in a white helmet tells another they're within launch tolerances, which sounds reassuring until you remember tolerances are just polite words for, "We think it'll probably work." A young engineer, his pocket stuffed with pens like a bouquet, stares up and whispers, "She's alive." I glance at the rocket's exhalations of white vapor and think, no, she's dreaming. The closer I get to the pad, the colder the air turns. Vapor curls along the asphalt, slithering around my boots like the ghost of winter that snuck into July. The hiss of liquid oxygen is everywhere, a long, steady whisper that sounds almost like caution. The fuel farm sits ahead, silver tanks sweating frost, each one banded in red and warning labels written by people who never expected poetry. I pause by the safety rail. A vent pops open and releases a geyser of gas that dances along the tarmac before fading into nothing. The smell is sharp and metallic like chilled pennies and ozone. I inhale, immediately regret it, and exhale something that feels like I've just licked a car battery. Ah, I mutter to myself, the perfume of progress. A technician in a Nomex suit passes, clipboard tucked under his arm. He doesn't look up as he murmurs numbers into a radio, but I can see the reflection of frost glittering on his sleeves. Another tech wipes condensation off a gauge with a rag that freezes instantly, stiff as a flag. Around us, cables twist like vines, oxygen vapor pooling at their bases. The entire pad breathes in visible sighs, cold smoke rising against a humid dawn. For a few seconds, everything holds still. The crawler idles, the fuel hisses, the rocket exhales its icy fog, and beneath all of it, below the noise, under the chatter of radios and the clatter of wrenches, there's a frequency I can feel more than hear. A deep vibration, as if the earth itself is tensing in empathy for what's coming. The launch control center looms across the causeway, its rectangular face austere and perfect, windows gleaming with morning glare. I follow the access road passing a pair of guards who look like they've been awake since World War II. Inside, the air conditioning hits like a second atmosphere, cold enough to keep coffee at theoretical. The corridor hums with fluorescent light and footsteps that want to sound calm. Through a glass partition, I can see the control room. Rows of consoles stretch outward like pews in a secular church. Each seat is filled. Headset-wearing men, crisp collars, pocket protectors holding the nervous system of a nation. On the wall, a massive clock counts backward in red digits. Steady, impartial, pitiless. Each tick sounds like history pulling its boots on. Main bus undervolt test complete. Someone calls. Telemetry good. Copy, good read. Go for engine chill down. The language of command here is clipped, elegant, and utterly devoid of poetry. And somehow it is poetry. Syntax stripped to function. Faith hidden in phrasing. One man leans close to another and murmurs something I can't hear. They both laugh quietly, the kind of laugh people use when they've already written their obituaries and want to make them less tragic. I linger at the doorway, not daring to speak. Beyond the glass, the whole of human precision glows in phosphor green and red. The room feels balanced on a breath. The radio chatter, the printers spooling telemetry, the hum of the air vents, it all harmonizes into a low electric chord. And then, under that hum, the faintest quiver reaches through the floor. The last growl of the crawler as it locks its brakes at the pad. It's done its job. The torch has been passed from brute strength to delicate calculation, from earth to sky, from crawl to climb. I catch my reflection in the glass. Hair wind-ruined, face freckled with dust, eyes wide as the moon they're about to reach. Behind me, a security guard sips bad coffee and mutters, "Never thought I'd live to see it." Most of us didn't, I say, not turning. Out the window, vapor still streams from the base of the rocket, curling through the sunlight in the slow spirals. The sky above is clear now, Florida blue, arrogant and endless. The pad exudes frost like a sleeping dragon, cold breath spreading across concrete and dune grass. Everything alive and metallic is trembling, not with fear, but readiness. The crawlerway gleams like a silver scar. The control center hums like a heartbeat, and the rocket stands at the intersection of physics and prayer. We've built something that doesn't belong on this planet, and the planet is trying its best to pretend it's fine with that. The voice of countdown crackles from a nearby speaker, clear and indifferent. T-minus 3 hours and holding. I smile, whispering to no one and everyone. The fuse is cold now, but not for long. Chapter 4. The Human Countdown. I step into a cafeteria that smells like nerves disguised as bacon. Fluorescents buzz with the calm of bureaucrats. The coffee tastes like it was brewed by a committee and approved by 3 subcommittees. At a corner table sit 3 men whose faces you already know without knowing. They don't speak much. When they do, it's soft, like you'd talk to a skittish animal or a miracle that hasn't signed its consent form yet. Steak and eggs, the unofficial breakfast of people about to leave the species. Toast stands upright, as if at attention. Juice glows astronaut orange. A dietitian watches with a clipboard, equal parts mother and traffic cop. A doctor checks pulses with the air of a priest who's stopped believing in coincidence. A technician wipes a non-existent crumb from a stainless tray, realizes it's already clean, wipes it again, because what else can you control when the next chapter is written in fire? I slide into the background, letting the room settle around me. Forks touch plates with the shy clink of porcelain being brave. One of the men smiles at a private joke, and it travels no further. The joke is out of fuel. Another rolls his shoulders like a swimmer counting tiles. They're not swaggering heroes right now. They're careful men preserving energy, choosing calm on purpose. The TV in the corner mutters weather and winds, a Greek chorus in polyester. Outside these walls, the world is up on roofs and beaches and car hoods, holding its breath. In here, we exhale on schedule. I pour coffee. It steams up into my face and smells like carbon and resolve. Bon appetit. History? I whisper. A nurse with eyes like sharpened pencils gives me the look that says, "Please don't be cute with destiny." Fair. Breakfast dissolves without ceremony. Plates empty. Paper napkins fold into small conquered flags. Someone says 5 minutes. The men stand, casual and precise, as if the room itself had issued a checklist. In the corridor, the air has the sterile chill of a hospital that learned math. Floor wax shines so hard you could shave in it. Footsteps line up with the tiles like a formation drill. We pass a bulletin board where a comic strip is pinned. A dog in a fishbowl helmet grinning at the moon. Gallows humor in pen and ink. I'm tempted to laugh, but settle for a smirk, because if you laugh too loud on mornings like this, fate gets curious. The suit-up room is a white box humming with quiet voltage. Racks hold ghostly shells, pressure suits in a color only engineers would call white, closer to the memory of white after 1,000 careful launderings. On a side table, the biomed sensors wait like silver freckles, adhesive dots ready to eavesdrop on the heart. The technicians, white coveralls, steady hands, voices tuned to reassuring, move with choreography learned from repetition and respect. Zippers rasp. Velcro clears its throat. Gloved hands test knuckle room. Cables slither into connectors with polite clicks. The Snoopy caps slip over hair and ears. Black and white skull caps dotted with microphones and purpose. It's an assembly line for saints. One of the techs pats a shoulder the way you'd pat the fender of a car you love. Solid, dependable, back soon. Breathing fills the room, a chorus of calm inhalations and measured exhalations. A cuff inflates on a forearm, releases. A small square sensor blinks green, then settles into a heartbeat rhythm. The telemetry printer at the wall whispers long receipts of life. And then the building itself flinches. A hiss, high, insistent, slices through the air like a rumor with facts. A white plume blooms in the gantry view window down the corridor, far off and up. Heads turn as one. The nearest tech goes still, listening with his whole spine. An intercom snaps alive. We have a hydrogen indication at the launch umbilical tower, 200-foot level. Replenish halted. Stand by. Even the air holds still. Somewhere, a pencil drops and the sound ricochets down the hall like a starter pistol. A second later, the room exhales, but nobody relaxes. Liquid hydrogen, ghost cold, explosive in the wrong conversation, absolutely essential in the right one. Not on the spacecraft, the voice says again. Ground support equipment. Flow stopped. The system's heartbeat is paused, not broken. I drift to the corridor window. Way out there, wrapped in steel like a patient embracing a very expensive exoskeleton, the Saturn V stands ringed by scaffolding. On the launch umbilical tower, high as gilt, a thin white vapor jets from a test valve, feathers into Florida humidity, and vanishes. Men are already ants in the lattice work, up ladders, across platforms, wrench glints and harness straps, and the violent competence of people trained to fix what cannot be allowed to fail. Even the air wants to join the mission, I say, because my mouth does this when my ribs are tight. Technicians flood the suit-up room doorway and then stop, unwilling to track contamination onto a ritual floor. The calm one with the clipboard reads from an invisible script. Console stopped replenish. No hazard to crew. Maintenance tightening fasteners at the valve. Another voice, the kind that could talk you out of a tree, adds, "They'll warm the valve with water if needed. We've got bypass capability." And just like that, I can feel the room counting again. Bolts tightened, still leaking. Warm it, steam blooms white, then thins, a winter trick in July. Still leaking. Bypass the valve. The intercom cracks. Replenish path restored. Hydrogen flow back to nominal. You can hear shoulders descend. Nothing cheers, nothing needs to. Instead, the work resumes at the volume of a library that loves you. The suits close up. Tethers thread into life umbilicals. A tech asks, "How's the fit?" and gets a thumbs up. Another tech's hands are so careful they might as well be prayers. Someone says it's time. The white room takes a breath and becomes a procession. The astronauts rise, sealed and specific, carrying the smallest amount of humanity you can carry and still count as all of us. Boots kiss tile. The corridor stretches forward like a very clean destiny. I trail at a distance, listening to the soft exhale of suit oxygen, the whisper of hoses, the muted clack of fittings knocking gently as they sway. We reach a staging area where a speaker mounted high on the wall gives the building its orders. The voice is crisp, a metronome with opinions. T-minus 10 minutes and holding. It's amazing how quickly silence can become a physical object. The word "hold" drops into the room and the air thickens. A pen rolls off a console and hits the floor with the social life of a gunshot. A guard clears his throat and looks like he wants to apologize to history for the inconvenience. Somewhere out in the control center, logic is being wrestled into place. Numbers shove numbers. Valves argue. Wind speaks its piece. We wait. And waitin' is loud. You can hear someone counting in their head, and you know they're counting too fast. You can hear cloth settle on plastic chairs. You can hear the buzz of the fluorescents switch from white to very white, because now you're paying attention. I imagine the entire coast held between finger and thumb, suspended over a trash can labeled "abort" and another labeled "go," and the hand is trembling, and the hand has to stop. In the window, the rocket stands implacable. Fog swaddling its lower flanks, upper stage glinting like an oath. The tower beside it is suddenly all angles, no comfort, a skeleton praying. The speaker crackles. A voice with the dryness of seasoned confidence says, "All. Stations, verify. Guidance, go. Booster, go. Fido, go. Ecom, go. Range, go. Weather, go." A beat. The room tips toward the future. Release the hold. We are go. For a half second, nothing moves, as if the word needs to find its legs. Then the room breathes in unison. Not a cheer. This isn't a baseball game, but the exhale is almost applause. The clipboard tech smiles with only one corner of his mouth, which at NASA is the equivalent of throwing confetti. Down the hall, the suits pivot toward the elevator. The white room door swings wide, a hinge announcing its cameo in the national myth. A tech catches my eye and shakes his head. Gentle, apologetic, because this part belongs only to those inside the zippers. Fair again. I step back into the corridor and let them pass. Men in white escorted by men in white, carrying within them a machine made of bone and hope. Their boots fade to a hush and then to nothing. For a long moment, I watch the empty hallway. It hums like a tuning fork struck by destiny. Courage, I say to the clean air, is just calm with a deadline. Outside, the wind has settled. The clouds part like an usher with good timing. On the pad, vapor spills, valves align, 1,000 tiny agreements lock into place. In a few minutes, 10, 9, 8, The loudest prayer ever spoken will be answered in flame. For now, though, we have fluorescent light, coffee gone cold, and a memory of a hiss that didn't become a headline. Human fragility under glass and steel. Heartbeats per minute climbing one by one like steps to a door that only opens outward. We're going, and the sky has agreed to listen. Chapter 5. The Edge of Silence. The transfer van smells like canvas, coffee, and nerves trying to act casual. Its headlights slice through the pre-dawn mist, catching faces pressed to the fences along the access road, families, engineers, kids on shoulders, dogs that definitely didn't get clearance. The crowd waves with that strange, reverent cheer people use when they don't quite believe what they're seeing. Inside the van, the astronauts sit shoulder to shoulder, their suits filling the space like a small weather system. From my vantage and the press convoy behind, the van looks like an ambulance driving backward in time. Flashbulbs pop from the roadside. Every click feels like a promise to remember. One little girl in a Fly Me to the Moon t-shirt waves a crayon sign that reads, "Good luck, Mr. Armstrong." The letters are crooked but enthusiastic. I wave back before remembering she can't see me. The van passes through Gate 3, the last checkpoint between Earth's bureaucracy and whatever comes after. Security salutes. No one says goodbye. It's a word that doesn't belong in NASA's vocabulary. See you after re-entry is the preferred superstition. As we near the pad perimeter, the giant reveals itself. Pad 39A is lit like a holy mistake. Towering steel, floodlights, and vapor breathing off the rocket in ribbons of silver. The Saturn V doesn't stand so much as loom. From the base, it's impossible to tell where machine ends and atmosphere begins. The gantry scaffolding glows red in the mist, an iron cathedral with a single sermon. Up. Fueling is nearly complete. The pipes hum with liquid hydrogen, cold enough to turn air to glass. The rocket's flanks shimmer with frost. Ice grown in a few breathless hours. The skin of winter layered over the skin of fire. And then, as if the heat beneath finally stirs, the frost begins to crack. A sound like brittle applause ripples down the tower. Chunks of ice fall in glittering cascades, breaking into stars against the floodlights. Rain made of yesterday's breath, deadly, beautiful, brief. The pad hisses like a glacier remembering heat. A technician beside me tilts his hard hat back and mutters, "That's all normal." His voice doesn't sound convinced. I glance up. The falling ice catches in the spotlight, every piece flashing for a heartbeat before vanishing. It's like watching a galaxy evaporate. A voice crackles from a nearby radio. "Hydrogen replenish complete. Begin securing lines." The words are ordinary enough, but the tone is one octave above prayer. The ground shakes slightly as the umbilicals flex. Somewhere beneath the pad, pumps the size of bungalows hum in perfect sync. Then, static, sharp, invasive, crawls across the loudspeakers. A warning tone cuts through the mist, followed by a voice that's calm enough to scare you. "Attention. Lightning advisory in effect. All personnel stand by." Heads lift instinctively, as though obedience can charm the weather. Out over the Atlantic, clouds gather like spectators who forgot tickets weren't free. The lightning towers around the pad are already whispering electricity. Tiny blue tongues licking their steel teeth. A tech near me mutters, "God's watching the countdown too." "Let's hope he's rooting for the home team," I say, mostly to my collar. The static deepens, and for a moment it sounds like the world inhaling. You can smell it. Ozone, salt, the coppery hint of storm waiting for an excuse. A few raindrops fall, huge and slow, smacking the concrete with the weight of punctuation. They sizzle faintly where they hit warm metal. And then, as abruptly as it started, the storm hesitates. The clouds drift inland, grumbling. The towers stop sparking. The loudspeaker returns, static-free now, its composure impeccable. Advisory lifted. Resume operations. It's almost funny, the kind of cosmic tease Florida specializes in. You can feel the collective shrug ripple through the crew. Somebody claps another's shoulder. Someone else mutters, "Would have been one hell of a baptism." From here, the pad is a living thing. Steam vents and slow exhales. Cables twitch as though flexing. The rocket's white skin gleams under the floodlights, patched with rectangles of frost that glint like scales. I can hear faint creaks from the metal gantry as the night air contracts it by imperceptible degrees. Thermal anxiety expressed in whispers. I move closer to the perimeter fence. The scene feels both enormous and intimate. The crawl of vapor across the pad floor, the rhythmic flicker of beacon lights, the sound of someone's walkie-talkie clicking through coded reassurance. Every sense feels magnified, tuned to the precise frequency of awe. The transfer van parks at the base of the pad, its doors open with the slow dignity of something that understands symbolism. The astronauts step out, white suits, black visors, their reflections caught in every camera lens. The gantry elevator hums to life, a silver rib cage lifting them skyward. I tilt my head back until the world narrows to a thin rectangle of floodlit steel. The elevator cage rises through it, shrinking, glowing, swallowed by height. Each level they pass lights up briefly, like neurons firing in a brain made of scaffolding. When they vanish near the command module access arm, the world below seems to pause again. Even the gulls, mid-flight, appear to hover between flaps, uncertain whether to leave or stay. The pad's intercom hums low, final checks, crosstalk, jargon traded like code words between old friends. Every syllable feels rehearsed and sacred. Down the road, spectators lean on their car roofs, transistor radios pressed to ears, each static burst a heartbeat. Time, I realize, is no longer behaving normally. Minutes feel like geological events. Every second expands to fit a lifetime. And then it happens. A single drop of melted frost slides off the rocket's skin, falls through the floodlight, and splashes onto the pad floor. Just water. Nothing more. Yet it feels like an omen clocking in for work. I smile faintly. The gods of engineering accept your offering. A final radio voice cuts through the air. Crew secure. In the command module, all stations green. The tech beside me exhales. That's it, he says softly. No turning back. The rocket looms overhead, enormous, impossible, quiet. The storm has retreated, the ice has fallen, the air itself waits in suspension. The only sound now is the low, almost human hum of a machine that's moments from ceasing to be a thing of earth. Every molecule here seems to understand. This is the edge of silence, the breath before thunder learns to fly. Chapter 6. Rocket Dawn. The air before launch doesn't feel like air. It feels like waiting given form. The humidity has weight. The crowd has gravity. Even the birds seem to have filed a flight plan and are holding position. I stand among thousands on the rise of Observation Hill, looking down at Pad 39A where the Saturn V stands taller than imagination should be allowed. Floodlights bathe it in white so bright it looks unreal, almost a matte painting of glory and danger stitched together. The rocket is sweating frost, its flanks glimmering with patches of frozen breath. Steam curls off the pad in lazy ghosts and the marsh beyond is a dark mirror reflecting the impossible. You could close your eyes right now and still feel it. The presence of power coiled, the low hum in the earth, the scent of burnt ozone and jet fuel marinating in Florida dawn. I glance to my right. A veteran stands beside me, older, crisp in posture despite the years carved into him. His cap says USS Essex, the ship Neil Armstrong once served on. His hand rests over his chest like he's pinning his memories in place. "Served with him?" I ask quietly. He nods, eyes fixed on the rocket. Navy man, good pilot, quiet, like space had already picked him. We both fall silent again. The countdown begins over the loudspeakers, disembodied, clinical, and yet full of something holy. T minus 10, 9. The voice is steady, almost bored, but the crowd isn't. You can feel the collective breath shrink to fit inside the second hand of a clock. The marsh wind stills. A dragonfly pauses midair as if nature itself wants to watch humanity misbehave. 5, 4. I can see frost flaking off the rocket, falling like snow in hell's anticipation. The sunlight at the horizon flares just enough to remind us there's already one star up there, and we're about to light another. 2, 1. The world blinks. At first, it's silent. A silence so pure it's offensive. Then a low growl uncoils from beneath the rocket, rising from vibration to symphony. The sound grows claws. It grips your ribs, your spine, your skin. Then the shock wave hits, the air turns to liquid, the ground to drum skin. Sand lifts, trembles, then settles again in reverent applause. A white sun births itself below the Saturn V, growing, stretching, becoming. The pad is swallowed in flame. The roar isn't noise, it's force-wearing sound's clothing. It doesn't pass through you. It rearranges you. You don't witness a Saturn V, I mutter, voice shaking with the ground. You survive it. The rocket begins to move, impossibly slow, like it's arguing with gravity, like it's not sure it's worth leaving the planet after all. Then, a fraction of a second later, it commits. The ascent starts, measured in defiance. The earth convulses again. Marsh water ripples violently, sending a wave racing toward the reeds. Somewhere behind me, a child screams in delight. Cameras click like 1,000 mechanical heartbeats. The old veteran beside me snaps to attention and salutes. Arm trembling, chin high, every muscle remembering discipline and disbelief at the same time. The rocket clears the tower. The light washes everything in gold and fire. The flame trench below vomits thunder that rolls across the swamp, bouncing off the air itself. It's not just a launch. It's the planet setting off an alarm to the universe. We're coming. The heron rises out of the smoke, then, pale wings slicing through the heat shimmer, climbing toward the column of fire. The first living thing to follow Apollo 11 upward. For a heartbeat, the bird and the rocket share the same path. One powered by instinct, the other by audacity. Both perfectly alive. As the thunder stretches across the sky, the veteran's hand drops from his salute. His shoulders shudder. Tears carve slow paths down his cheeks, catching the reflected light of the inferno. He whispers, almost to himself, "That's my friend up there." I reach out and rest a hand on his shoulder. It's hot from the rising sun, or maybe from the sheer burn of emotion. He doesn't look at me. He's still staring upward, into the orange wound the rocket has torn in the heavens. "Hell of a thing to watch," I say softly. He nods, eyes wet but steady. "Hell of a thing to survive." The rocket keeps climbing, trailing its own thunder, shrinking to a spark against the morning. The roar begins to fade, first from the chest, then from the ears, until all that's left is the ringing quiet of disbelief. The marsh reflects the afterglow, molten gold rippling across still water, like God spilled paint and didn't bother to clean it up. The crowd begins to move again, clapping, crying, laughing, hugging strangers like fellow witnesses of something divine. The veteran wipes his face with a trembling hand. "He'll be fine," he mutters, though it sounds like he's trying to convince the wind. Neil always lands on his feet. "Maybe this time," I reply, "he'll land on someone else's world." He laughs once, short and raw. Then he turns back toward the sky, whispering, "Bring him home." Above us, the contrail climbs endlessly, a white scar reaching through layers of blue into forever. For a while, we both just watch it fade. 6 days from now, the world will stop again. On July 20th, 1969, 2 men will step out of a machine built by the stubbornness of a planet that refused to stay put. Neil Armstrong, that quiet pilot from the Essex, will press his boot into alien dust and say words that will outlive marble and metal. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And somewhere, this old sailor will be watching, standing a little taller, knowing his friend kept his promise to rise. The crowd begins to disperse, the air still trembling with the memory of thunder. I stay for a while longer, watching the light thin out into morning. The sun rose twice that day, once for Florida and once for the species. The wall of gravity didn't fall, it simply exhaled. Sleep gently, sleepyheads. The circle remembers you even when time forgets.